I really love the 2-1 buy. I don't know if you've run into those
I
often.
have, but I feel like, can you explain them? So welcome everybody back to my channel. We are here with my buddy Ed Stratton. We are here to answer all your major questions about financing. We want to provide value to you. And yeah, welcome Ed.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to talk with you guys.
Yes, how much should I save for a down payment? And I can't wait to hear what you say about this, because I, for one, before I became a realtor, I always thought 20% down, right? And just in the conversations that we've had, you'll answer it, but I find it very interesting.
That's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that you got to have 20% to put down.
Yeah.
Granted, the more money you have down, the more programs are going to be available.
Right.
But don't put off buying a house because you don't have 20%.
Right.
There's down payment assistance programs. Like in the state of Florida here, we have the Hometown Heroes and a whole bunch of other down payment assistance programs where you can literally have helped people get into houses with almost no money out of pocket.
Right.
Don't expect that scenario, because it's a lot tougher and it's going to limit your options. But if you can save 3%, you can go conventional and get a conventional loan. If you have 3.5%, you can go FHA.
Okay.
VA, that's my favorite loan out there. My dad's retired military, so that's no money down. You still have closing costs that generally run you about 4%.
Right.
In most areas, it depends on where you're at, what state, and what program you use, but about 4%. So the more money you have saved, the better. But don't let that be the factor from stopping you. Again, I'm going to direct you back to reach out to your local lender and talk with them, and they can give you that plan. Just because you only have $2,000 in your bank account, you might not be able to buy now, but when you talk to that lender, they can give you that goal to reach to.
Right.
We're coming up on beginning of the year's tax season. There's a good bit of people that at tax time, if they have families, are going to get a tax refund.
Right.
So talk to the lender now going into the tax season, and you can have that money from your tax refund and possibly use that as down payment or closing costs.
What do I need? That's amazing. Yeah, that just blew my mind. I mean, how many people have 20%? That's a thing.
Yeah.
Right? They think, I've got to rent. I can't. I mean, a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. So it's like,
correct.
I can never get into a house because I can't do 20% down.
Correct. It's really hard. But luckily, there's some great programs out there. And, the government actually is trying to push to make homes more affordable. It doesn't seem like it with what they're doing with interest rates, but they're trying to come up with different programs that can take lower to moderate income and help home ownership become a reality. So there's a ton of grant programs out there. I'm doing a grant for a client right now. She was renting a room from somebody, and she's just like, I have to move out. It's her and her mom living in a room in somebody's house. And she was like, I have to get out of this house. I got to do something. Her and her mom have, between her mom's Social Security and her income, they have decent income, but they've just got no money. They have no money. We actually we found them a $20,000 grant. And then we got the seller of the house to give them $10,000 for closing costs.
That's amazing.
So she's going to get in this house for about $1,000 out of pocket for her earnest money, and she'll spend a little bit on home inspections. But it was one of those things of, she had been told no by her actual bank. They were like, there's no chance you can get a loan. You don't have money saved. You don't qualify. And she came to a local lender, me. She was referred by her real estate agent. We talked, went over a scenario, and I said, look, this is tough, but I'm going to connect you with this counselor, and we're going to try to get you this grant. And it took about 60 days for us to go get the grant, but now we have the grant. She went shopping, she put a home under contract, and she's going to close the beginning of the year on it.
And is that do banks not offer that because they're more restricted in their lending?
So some banks are restricted. You'll find a lot of local lenders that are actually backed by a bank.
Okay.
So the big thing I talk to people is, if I'm going to have somebody do work for me on my house, like if I'm having tile work done, I want a tile guy, right?
Right.
I don't want a guy that does everything in the house. I want the tile guy if I want really great tile done. Are there other people that can do all the work in my house? Yes. Are there other people that can do tile? Yes. But if you want the best job, you want the best price and the best quality work, you use somebody that specializes in that. So for me, I just do mortgages.
Okay.
That's what I do. I do residential mortgages, so that I became an expert at that. When you go to a bank, you might have a teller telling you what you could do. Or you have somebody who does mortgages at the bank, but the bank's really focused on growing their deposit relationships and those things. And they use mortgages as a service they provide. Mortgage is my only service. So that's what I kind of tell people. The banks sometimes will be more conservative, but they just aren't as well trained. They don't have the same amount of products. And it's just, to some banks, that's just an extra service they have.
Right.
Whereas this is like our focus and our passion and what we do.
That's amazing. I feel like people don't know that. I think it's normal where people just go to their banks, the bank that they're working, and then it's like, oh no, you can't do it.
Yeah, and the big banks especially are really tightening up because of some of the different regulations and things that are coming out with liquidity.
Right.
You know, so they're really tightening up their box and they're staying away from risk. You know, where a lot of your small local lenders out there is, we're here to help, you know, and we have a greater appetite for risk, you know?
I love that line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. We get this question a lot. Clients want to know, you know, what credit score do I need to have?
Each program has different minimum credit scores. So your financial situation really is going to dictate what credit score you can do.
Right.
You know, a lot of people don't know, like if you had something happen in your past that affected your credit, your score's not great,
right.
You know, if you have 10% to put down, you can actually get an FHA loan down to a 500 credit score.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people don't know that.
Okay.
Now, granted, you're going to have a higher interest rate and it's going to be a little tougher to get your loan done.
Right.
But those are different things out there for if you had something happen in the past, you've fixed it and you're working on fixing it.
Right.
But, you know, like I work with a lot of clients that go through a divorce.
Okay.
Divorce generally is going to hurt your credit. Okay. Just splitting up the debts, the different things that happen during a divorce, your credit score is going to go down.
Okay.
You know, for conventional loans, you need a 620 credit score. So that's where a lot of people are going to really want to work towards to get to that 620. The higher you get, the better your interest rate gets. You know, to get the top tier interest rate for most programs, you need to be a 740 or higher.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, it makes sense because it's like, you know, the less risk for the lenders, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
You start to get rewarded as your credit score goes up.
Right.
One of the things, though, is a lot of people are like, I don't have great credit, I can't buy a house. And they hold off from buying.
Yeah.
They don't do anything. And I'll end up pulling their credit after them thinking for 6 months they couldn't buy a house. And they've got like a 680 or a 660 credit score, which in my world as a lender, I've got a ton of options for you. You know, so it's always great. Most lenders that you work with, you know, like one thing that we do is we'll do a soft pull on credit so it doesn't hit your credit score.
Right.
So it gives us the ability to see what your score is, see what's going on. We can even take, if you've got a low credit score and you want to get it higher, we can take your credit report and run it through a simulator that'll say, hey, if you pay this credit card down to this, if you pay off this debt, your score in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days will go to X, you know?
Wow.
So you can actually project where your score will go. Okay. So if you are that 620 and you want to start looking for a house, while you're looking for that house, we can work on getting your score higher. So when you do find the home, maybe you have some different programs available, or you can get a better interest rate. So my advice is, you know, get a lender that'll do a soft pull, so it doesn't hit your credit, because everybody's concerned, I don't want my credit pulled. You know, even a hard pull has very little effect on your score. But if you have a soft pull, it doesn't affect your credit at all, and it can give you that starting point.
All right. And what about, so I have a friend who, like, they declared bankruptcy, and then they felt like they couldn't buy a house after that? Like, in that scenario...
Yeah, so it depends on what type of bankruptcy.
Okay.
You know, because you have your Chapter 7 and Chapter 13.
I think it was Chapter 13.
Chapter 13 is the one where you kind of work your debts out. And you agree to repay them. You know, Chapter 13, you can actually do an FHA loan. It's really tough to do while you're in your bankruptcy.
All right.
It's easier if you, on a Chapter 13, you come out of bankruptcy, and then you can do an FHA loan. 2 years out, you can do a conventional loan. Chapter 7 is a little tougher, you know, because that's the one, you wipe everything clean, you start over. That's the big bankruptcy. But it's not the end of the world. So 2 years, you can do an FHA loan.
I feel like, do people know that?
A lot of people don't know that.
That is gold, people.
Yeah, and you got to, like, the big thing is you're going to end up talking about a lot of really uncomfortable things, you know, and sharing your finances and stuff. But you got to understand that, like, us as lenders and real estate agents, our goal is to get you in a home. You know, we want to help you. And we're not going to get paid unless we help you get into that home. You know, so, like, be open with us, be honest, share what's going on. You know, we're going to find it when we pull your credit. But we'll work through it. Our goal is, like, I genuinely get super excited when I have a client that, like, thought there was no hope for them to buy a house, or they were super scared to share information. And we have these great conversations and work over a few months. And then they get into their home, because it just brings so much pride and joy to them. And for me, those are kind of like the most rewarding ones.
Right. And this is why it's important to work with really incredible lenders. And the ones on my channel are my preferred lenders. And I chose them specifically just because I have huge hearts. So, okay, so a lot of my clients are wondering how much home they can afford.
Yeah, so it's a really great question. That's like one of my favorite things to do as a lender is discovering what your budget should be. So generally, the max you can have for housing payment plus all of your debts is about 45% of your income.
Okay.
There's different loan programs where you can go higher than that, but really, if you're going to really find out what you qualify for, you need to talk to a lender. The earlier you talk with a lender, they can kind of run those numbers because the taxes are different everywhere, And then there's different programs where you can take that debt to income ratio a lot higher.
Right.
But if you're just trying to get a base number to figure out what price range you should be at, 45% of your income can go towards your housing payment and all of your debt.
Okay. Someone coming in, there's so many mortgage products. Let's say I'm coming into your office, I'm like, what kind of mortgage should I apply for?
Yeah. So that's a really big one. Like you have to go talk to a lender for that because everybody's situation is different. I can't really tell you what the right one is without asking a lot of questions. So the big things we're going to ask to figure out what the right one is, how much money do you have saved? Because that's going to tell us.
Like not much.
Yeah. So if you don't have much, like I know right off the bat, if you don't have much, I'm looking for down payment assistance programs or probably like FHA or a really low down conventional. So we go the first layer. The next layer I'm going to ask is, what do you think your credit score is?
Ooh.
And that's the tough one. If you tell me you got a lower credit score, I'm probably gonna, if you have a low credit score and low down payment, we're not going to go conventional.
Right.
Because
so what if I don't have any savings or not much and my score's like 680? I'm pretty sure, I'm just throwing it out there, 680.
Yeah, so if you're a 680 and you don't have much saved, I'm probably going to take you FHA and look for some down payment assistance. And here's the reason why. On a conventional loan, mortgage insurance is determined by the amount you put down and your credit score.
Okay.
FHA is a flat amount for your mortgage insurance. Oh. So if you have a 580 or a 780, your mortgage insurance costs the same amount on an FHA loan.
Really?
So if you're below 700 with a low down payment, generally we're going to go FHA.
Okay.
And that's why it's important to really be open and upfront with your lender. And if they ask you to put an application in, do it. Because the reason they're doing that is they want to be able to get the whole financial picture to see. I'm going to ask you if you think you're VA eligible, if you were ever in the military, because that's always a great one to go. And the other piece that we're going to try to figure out is what price range are they looking in? If you tell me you're looking at, a house like the one we're sitting in today, that's $1.3 million on the water. Yeah. And you don't have much down, like obviously we're really limited, but that's going to take you, once you go over 750, it's going to take you into the jumbo world, which is a whole different kind of lending sphere.
Right. I didn't even know that was a thing. Jumbo loans is a thing.
Yep. And they're stricter, have stricter guidelines, higher credit requirements and things like that.
Okay. So in this scenario, if I'm because like normal price range for houses in Cape Coral is like 400,000.
Yep.
So in my scenario, is that a possibility?
Yeah, depending on what your income and everything is. I do a ton of FHA loans, and depending on what you have saved, we might partner them with a down payment assistance program, whether it's through one of our national programs that we offer or through the state of Florida. Like I said, Hometown Heroes is great.
Right.
If you work for a Florida-based company or a brick and mortar in Florida, and your income's below the threshold for your county, and it's a pretty high threshold for that Hometown Heroes. Yeah. That's a great program to use.
Yeah. I was just talking to a client about that because she basically is trying to save up right now so she can buy next year. I was like, you got to talk to my lender. But
and it's one of those things, like people have this stigmatism with talking to the lender of like, and I tell people the application is like a living, breathing document because people think when they put the application in, it's deny or we could buy.
Or you're trying to sell something to them.
Yeah, and it's I'm not selling you anything. I'm helping you achieve your goals. Like that's what I tell everybody. I'm going to give you some awesome and great advice at the end of the day. Yeah. It's totally free advice. Do what you want with it. Right. But put that application in because it's going to be one of those things. Hey, you might be ready right now and we can help you right now. Or the other one is, hey, we need to work on your credit. Here's the steps to fix this. Right. We need to work on saving some money. Or we need to work on cutting some of your debt. And there's great options and partnerships that we have where if you need to cut some debt, I know people that can help you refinance auto loans. I know people that can do debt consolidation loans and put all that stuff together to get where your debt to income makes sense.
So you're like the money magician.
I like that. I like it. I'm going to use the hashtag from now on, money magician.
I don't know. I feel like especially in banks, there's just like such a negative, even in movies, it's like the bankers are always trying to like, and that's, I think the idea, bankers are trying to steal your money. They're, and you're like the problem solver or like, money counselor, financial counselor almost.
Yeah, so I like to take like a whole, I want to know your whole finances and look at it. Like I know enough about taxes to be really dangerous. Like I'm not a CPA,
Right.
but I've done so much working with my CPA and working with other people's stuff that like I know a lot of different stuff you can do.
Right.
I know a ton about investing in investment accounts and real estate investing.
Yes, he's got investments.
Of just like, let's sit down and let's figure out what your goals are. Most people who buy their first house think it's going to be their forever home, which it's almost never your forever
Right.
home, and it's like when we have that initial conversation, it's, hey, why do you want to buy? Like so many people are like, you got to buy when the rates are low. No, why do you want to buy?
So
and that will determine when the right time to buy is,
Right.
like, do you want to buy so you have control of what pets you own,
Right.
of how much your monthly payment's going to be, because if you've been renting right here locally in Cape Coral, Fort Myers, you know that your rent is skyrocketing. And every single time the renewal comes, it's higher.
It's going up.
That's not stopping.
Or you're getting kicked out.
Yeah, or you're getting kicked out. So that control piece of like, do I want to put some stability for my family? Do I want to plant roots? I look at like, when you buy a house, you're kind of planting roots in that community.
Right.
Like,
which is true, but when I first bought my first house, the planting, just because I always moved, the planting roots was what scared me because I thought it was, if you buy a house, then you have it forever.
Yeah.
But this is how I convinced my parents, because they moved all the time to finally buy, was it doesn't have to be forever.
Correct.
Right? Like, let's just stop paying rent. And they've actually, in the last year or something that they've owned, I don't know, their equity went up like $30,000 or something.
Yeah.
Like now they can pull out some of that. But when they were renting, they couldn't. There was no control. They kept,
A lot of my wealth was created through buying homes. I got started really early, bought my first house when I think I was 21.
Wow.
21, we decided we wanted to buy our first house. I had to do a little credit repair just because I had like no credit. I had like, from when I was in college, I had that $500 credit card that I like used for gas.
Yeah.
And that was like my only line of credit that I had. And I used a down payment assistance program.
Okay.
And I don't think I've lived in a house for over 4 years. Like I've owned some for longer than that, but actually living in, I think 4 years is 3.5, 4 years, the max I was ever in one.
Wow.
So that's why, like, let's talk about your goals. Like if you're early starting out in your career and you know you're gonna be making more later, then this first house should be a little bit more about, hey, what's the potential for this first house? Are we looking for a first house in an area where I can do a little bit of work on it while I'm living there and the area is growing and I'm gonna get some appreciation and I can sell it when I'm ready to move and I'm making more money?
Right.
Or I have a family, those different things. Or am I looking for a house that might be a great rental down the road? A lot of the people that bought when rates were really low, they're never gonna sell those houses. They're just gonna turn them into rentals and they'll buy their next one. So it's really like, talk to your agent and talk with your lender about your goals. When you talk with the lender about the goals, they can kind of decide what programs and price point a little bit more.
Okay.
And when you talk with your agent about your goals, now they know what house to look for.
Right.
If your goal is you're going to try to live in this house forever, your agent's probably going to look for a different house if you say, hey, I want a house that has at least 3 bedrooms, but in 5 years, I'm going to move. So if you're looking for a house for that person, you're looking for one that has appreciation potential.
Yeah.
So in 5 years, they can sell it and make money. Or in an area where, hey, if it hasn't appreciated enough to sell it, you can actually rent this house and make good money. So that's information you need to share. The more information you share, like we're experts at taking that information and helping you achieve your goals. But you have to share that information.
Yes, it's so true. I was actually just talking to a client of mine. They were wanting to buy down here, but they were afraid to because they don't know the area.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's the upside of having a really great realtor. We know the area.
Yeah.
They decided to rent, but I said, the other option is, let's say we buy in a really good area. You don't love that area. Well, after a year, like, let's rent it out and then we can help you purchase in the area that you want to. So they ended up renting, but there are options, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people, when they first move down here, are like, I'm gonna rent, I'm gonna figure out the area.
Yeah.
And depending on what the market's doing, that might be a decent strategy. If you're in a market where, like right now, what we're seeing, you can actually probably get the best deal you're gonna get in quite some time. It's a buyer's market, there's inventory on there. You have a lot of motivated sellers.
Closing costs.
Yeah, you're getting closing
it's
costs.
Like $10,000, right? Sometimes.
All that stuff. You're getting rate buy downs, all those great things that might make sense of, hey, I'm not sure what area to go, but I'm gonna buy something. Maybe it's, if I qualify for 600, maybe I'm gonna buy a $350,000 house just to figure the area out,
right.
But it's mine.
Right.
I know that in a year I can, rent this house out and make a good cash flow. Or I know in a year that because I bought so low, I might not make money, but I can get out from this house and move into what I want. But but it gives you that time to figure it out versus coming down, especially if you're coming down right now where rents are through the roof because it's in season.
Yeah, I felt so bad. They did decide to rent, but we're here to give you all the information. You guys can make the decision, right? Okay. This is a question I didn't even know to ask before I got into the real estate and lender world. I did not even know, and maybe most of the viewers don't know, that you can actually pay down points to get a lower rate. But is that beneficial in the long run?
Yeah, so that's another one where you really got to talk about your goals.
Right.
You know, if you tell me you're going to be in a house for 3 to 4 to 5 years, when we run a break-even analysis, which is where we take the cost of the points versus your monthly savings and find out where those two numbers cross.
Right.
You know, so like if it costs you $5,000, you know, to buy a rate down, and it's going to save you $100 a month.
Right.
You know, we're looking at 50 months for you to break even.
Yeah,
so if
yeah,
you're going to move out month number 24, I'm going to tell you just take the higher interest rate and make
Yeah.
those payments. Now, some of those situations are not as much of a break-even analysis. It's more of a, hey, I can't afford and I'm not comfortable with this payment. You know, so those are the ones we talk about. People who are buying now, I kind of advise them, hey, if you're comfortable with the higher interest rate, let's not pay points and let's take it. And here's why. We know in 12 to 24 months, rates are coming down.
Right.
You know, rates are going to come down. So that money's thrown in the trash if I'm going to refinance you,
Right.
you know, in 2 years.
Right.
So that's one of those things where we sit down, we look at your goals, we look at your comfort level. You know, if you are comfortable with the higher payment, let's take it. We'll take that extra money that you were going to throw 2 points and we'll use it when we do the refinance into a lower interest rate. And that's in a falling interest rate environment. You know, I feel like rates have kind of, we're towards the peak. And hopefully going into the next year and everything, we start heading down and rates come down.
Right.
So in that environment, I would probably say, unless you have to, let's not pay points.
Right.
You know, in an environment where rates are really low, like what we went through,
Right,
and you
and
can
then
lock in this ultra low rate that, you know, you think in the next 5 years rates are going to be higher than that, that might make sense to accomplish your goals. But the biggest thing is, don't just focus on that interest rate. You have to know what your goal is, and you have to know the break even.
Right.
You know, so like you can go around and brag that you got a 2.99, but you spent $50,000 to buy it down,
Yeah.
and it's going to take you 10 years to break even.
And you're not going to stay in the
You know,
house.
so those are those things to really work through and look at. I really love the 2-1 buy downs.
Yes.
I don't know if you've run into those.
I have,
often.
but I feel like, can you explain them? Because not everyone knows.
So a 2-1 buy down, and we're seeing a ton of these in this market, especially with motivated sellers, is where the seller actually pays to lower your interest rate for the first 2 years.
Right.
So just give you an example. Let's say today the interest rate's 7.25. So you would get a 30-year mortgage, it's 7.25, but the seller would, for year number 1, the rate would be 2% lower. So you're looking at 5.25 for year 1.
Okay.
So depending on your loan size, that might be $500 a month in savings.
A lot.
You know, year number 2, it's going to be 1% lower, so it'll be 6.25. You know, so maybe if it was 500 in year 1, it's 250 in year 2. But that savings all paid by the seller, so it's not money out of your pocket. So if you're negotiating on a house, it's been on the market for over 45 days. You know, again, talk to your agent because they're going to be the market expert and say, hey, I think this home's a little high priced. I think this is what we could do. You know, don't just focus on getting the lowest price for the home. Maybe we get seller credits, or maybe we get a 2-1 buy down, you know, and then that buys you, like I tell people, that buys you time to wait for interest rates to come down.
Right.
And before year number 3, more than likely we'll refinance you, but you got the seller to help you get that low payment for the first 2 years.
Right.
Or let's say you're transitioning down here, you know, and you have another house you're going to be paying on for a few months while it sells. Who doesn't want a $500-$600 a month lower payment for the first year?
Right.
And we're actually doing, on the lender side, in some situations, we'll work through with the client and we'll do a lender paid 1-year buy down. So let's say it's 7.25. What we'll do for you is we'll give you 6.25 for the first year as a lender.
Okay.
You know, and that's a great option to really kind of work through depending on your situation. If you're trying to sell a house and you're like, hey, I keep doing price drops and nobody's interested.
Right.
You know,
so instead of giving, what you're saying is instead of the seller, because we are seeing a lot of like, I'm going to give them $10,000 towards their closing costs. So instead of that, they're using that $10,000.
Correct.
Okay. To
in some
buy down the rate.
instances, you'll get both. You know, you get a buy down and 10. So I have one that's closing that they've got a 2-1 buy down that's closing tomorrow, and they have $10,000 in seller's assistance. You know, you got both. But that's the beauty of this market. There's a lot of people because of the interest rates that aren't buying.
Right.
So what that's causing is some sellers to get a little nervous. Like, let's say you have to move.
Yeah.
You know, you relocated for your job and you've got this house you have to sell. You've got a ton of equity.
Yeah.
You know, if you bought it 5 years ago, you're sitting on a ton of equity. you might be really motivated to sell it. And if somebody comes along and proposes a deal, you're more inclined to accept it than in the market we had a year ago where it's like, are you paying cash?
Yes.
You're not? Okay,
Oh my goodness.
then you're not going to get the house.
For a while, it was all cash buyers almost, right?
Yeah, it was crazy.
Like,
I hated it
buyer?
in the mortgage world, because it was cash
Right.
with a lot of that. But this is your opportunity to go get your deal. And I do think the window over the next few months is going to start to close. And then we're going to be on another run of where it's really tough for the average person to compete.
Right. This is gold information, because I was actually just talking to my brother-in-law who's interested in investing down here. And he's like, it's not the rate that scares me. Everybody's scared about the rate. He's like, what scares me is when the market changes and it gets crazy. He's like, I don't want to have to keep bidding on these houses, right? And then it's a bidding war.
Correct.
He's like, I'd rather go in now, when there's not a lot of buyers, buy the one that I want, and then refinance later.
Correct.
But a lot of people don't they're just so scared of the rate.
Yeah, they're scared of the rate. And then, just like anything in media, the media makes money by creating fear and creating you to watch stuff. They have to pump out stuff that's going to get viewers to pay attention.
Right.
And we all know the number one motivator for most of the people in the world is fear. So a lot of the stuff they do is like really dramatic, and they push this narrative that we have a crash coming, and like you see this stuff start to creep up in your feeds. Just looking at the numbers, the likelihood that we'll have a crash is very low. Do we have a little bit of price corrections happening? 100%. Did we see crazy appreciation over the last 3 years?
Yeah.
Yes. So we need a little bit of price correction. We have some of that coming, which is normal, and it's really good and healthy for the market. There's 30 to 40% of homes in the United States don't even have mortgages, so they're paid off.
Wow.
And there's just a lack of inventory out there. So all the numbers and data does not support us having a crash.
Right.
Now, if we had some crazy event that caused massive unemployment and people couldn't pay their bills because of it,
right,
then you're going to have a correction because people are going to have to sell their houses and foreclose and things like that.
Right.
But barring a major event like that causes massive unemployment, I see the market trending down just a little bit in some pockets. There's some areas that are even going highest and best in the country still. Wow. I see it stabilizing a little bit, and then we're going to head back up as interest rates come down because there's not a ton of supply and there's a bunch of demand. It's just some of that demand's kind of on the sidelines right now,
right,
waiting for rates to hit a certain bucket to where either they can afford the house they want or they're comfortable with the payment.
I feel like 2024 is going to be a wave, right? Don't you feel like that?
I think we're going to have an interesting first 1 or 2 quarters.
Right. But towards the end of the year.
And as kind of interest rates and the Fed kind of battle out what they're going to do
right,
and things like that. But the minute we get a little bit of solid footing that rates are on a trajectory down and the Fed is cutting rates,
right,
I think you're going to see a frenzy.
Right. People are going to rush into the market, and that's sellers finally wanting to sell a house and moving.
Yeah.
And buyers coming in finally, purchasing.
Yeah, because you have a ton of FOMO, the fear of missing out. You had all these people that didn't buy when everybody was like, don't buy right now, the market's going to crash, because the prices were going like this and everybody's like, don't buy, it's going to crash. Well, what happened? It didn't crash. Prices still went up even higher. And now instead of being able to get a rate in the 3s and 2s, you got to deal with 7s and 8s. So you got a lot of people that are like, man, I wish I would have bought, even myself, I wish I would have bought more houses.
Really?
So I think when they hit this tipping point and where that magic number is, I don't know, is it in the 6s, in the low 6s, is it in the low 5s? I think when you start to see most of your rates with a 5 in front, whether it's 5.99, 5.875, I think at that point is when you're going to really see a ton of people hop in. I don't know who came out with the numbers, but there's a study that shows that for every 1% the rate drops, 5 million new buyers enter the market.
Did you hear that?
So.
Okay, so you have a 13-year-old, and let's say they're, right now they're actually 19, not 13.
Yeah.
What's your advice to your 19-year-old?
Get in real estate early,
So even though the rate is crazy right now, you would tell your 19-year-old, get in now?
Yep. So you got to be really smart. In high rate environments where there's potential where they could come down, you need experts around you. You need to make a smart buy. Don't just go out there and bid on the first thing and 100% you're going to buy it. Know what your goal is, have a plan, have really great people around you, but get in the market. It is more about time in the market than timing the market.
Right.
If you try to guess the perfect time to buy, 90% of the time you're going to be wrong. The perfect time to buy was 2 years ago, But 2 years ago, the pandemic was going on, so we were scared. Are you going to lose your job? Are you going to get a reduction?
Yeah.
Is the market going to crash?
Yeah.
Like, this is so crazy. So some people sat on the sidelines. That was probably the best time in the history, of the United States to buy a house.
Right.
So stop trying to time the market and more of get in the market, make a smart buy, and have a game plan. Because at the end of the day, over time, housing prices always go up.
Right.
Inflation is great for housing prices. The higher inflation goes, it inflates that housing price number. It sucks if you don't have a house.
Right.
But if you're in a house, just ride the wave. It's going up, So my advice would be to get in, and if you're a younger or a first-time home buyer, like a really great strategy I love is house hacking.
Yes.
So
I love that he's talking about this.
So you can actually do an FHA loan with 3.5% down and buy a 4-unit, a 2-unit, or a 3-unit property. And we can use the rental income on those other units. And it doesn't even have to be rented yet. We can use the projected rental income to help you qualify for that home. So let's say you qualify on your own. You're 19 years old, you're going to buy your first house, you got a little money saved, you qualify for $250. It's really tough in the Cape to find a house for $250.
You can't.
If it's a duplex,
not a great one.
I might be able to get you to $450 using that rental income because we have great rental
This is insane.
here. So now you qualify for $450. There's a bunch of duplexes in that $400 to $500 range. So now you have options, and now you go buy it, you live in it for 2 years, you rent the one side out. Now you've got your big job, you're doing well, you're ready to settle down. Maybe it's 3-5 years. You've got appreciation. So your house is worth more than what you bought it for. And you move out and you rent out both sides of it now. So now you have a property that's paying for itself and giving you a little bit of income to go towards the next house you buy. So that's one of those things. Get in early, make smart buys. Don't try to buy your dream home out of the gate. Like, I feel like there's so many people that have this mindset of like, I got to find the perfect house, or like a house that I can show my friends, or like that different stuff. Think long-term in housing. Like, hey, I can buy this house, and if I put a little bit of work in over the next 3 to 5 years while I live here, maybe it needs new flooring, or like things that are done, or paint, or small little things. You can add a little addition over time.
Right.
Those homes will grow in value, or it turns into a great rental for you if you buy a multifamily home.
This is gold information. He actually shared this with me last time we met, and I talked to my 14-year-old son about this. And right now he's like, so when I turn 18 or 19, I'm going to buy a duplex, because I wish I would have known this information when I was
wish I would have done it different.
Like, we're going to help him. His first place is not going to be a house or like some weird apartment with his friends. We're going to help him get a duplex. He's renting out the other side. He's able to afford that huge thing just from the information that you told me. And then I think doesn't he only have to be in it for a year, technically?
For a year, yeah.
So if he doesn't like the duplex life after a year, cool, let's rent out both sides. And that is the base of his equity, like starting to build, right?
And it just gets them started early in the game. The earlier you get into real estate, as long as you have the right people surrounding you and make the right decisions, like there's a ton of people that I know that are in their early 30s that started early in real estate, bought right, did the right things. They don't work anymore.
Yeah.
Like they've got a real estate portfolio that brings them in passive income every month. They kind of choose the lifestyle they want.
Right. But this is why it's so important to have people that are going to fight for you or they're by your side and are wanting to share these tips. All right. Another great question is, how long does it take to close on a home?
Yeah, so that really depends on what loan type you're doing and who your lender is. Okay. And this is an area where you find your local lenders really separate themselves from the big banks.
Okay.
The big banks and your local banks, they might take 45 to 60 days. We're able to streamline that process. My average closing, I tell people 30 days from start to finish, no matter what loan program you do. But one competitive advantage you can have, and we're doing it right now for a client that just went under contract yesterday, is talk to your lender, give them all your documents. A lot of times I'll talk with people and they'll be like, well, this is just a pre-approval. Why do I need to give you all this? If I'm sending you a pre-approval, I know we're going to close on a house. There's no doubt in my mind that when you write that contract and you pay for that appraisal and your inspections, we're closing as long as you want to.
Right.
And something doesn't come up. Give them all the documentation. We'll actually take those files and pre-underwrite them before you even have a house. So that gives us what we're doing right now. We have a client that wanted to close very quickly and wanted to use that as negotiating power to get a better deal. Okay. So they put an offer in under what the house was worth, and we're doing a 15-day closing from start to finish. However,
that's fast.
She had sent,
so fast.
She had sent all of her documentation in. We got it all reviewed, underwritten by Underwriting, so I comfortably could say, hey, 15 days is no problem. And she went under contract. And it's one of those things, especially as we switch to a market that becomes more competitive, so much about your offer is the terms.
Yes.
If you're competing with cash, you better have a really, really solid pre-approval. You're probably going to have to offer more than the cash offer, and you got to close really quick.
Right.
So if you can close a deal as fast as people are closing cash, that helps you out, because most people who pay cash in a normal market aren't paying full price. They're coming in, I'm a cash offer, which I'm guaranteed I'm going to close.
Yep.
I'm going to give you 5-10% less than what your asking price is.
Very interesting.
So that's one of those things. 30 days is normal. Really, we can close it any time period that you select. If you need to close in 45 days, then we'll write a contract for 45 days. But know that that closing period is one of your kind of offer characteristics.
Right.
That could make it more competitive and stand out against other offers, or more likely to get accepted.
So why is it so much longer with the banks? Is it just like their underwriting?
It's just they're not staffed the same. This isn't their
priority.
bread and butter, their number one priority,
Right.
all they ever do. And they generally run a lower staff ratio to the number of loans they do, where we want to give amazing service as your local lending companies and mortgage companies. So we staff a little bit heavier, so that we can do those quick turn times, so we can be more competitive.
Right. Can you explain? I feel like some people don't know the term underwriting, like what that involves or what it means exactly.
Yeah, so there's two types of underwriting. There's the one that we're going to run kind of up front when we're doing your pre-approval. So we'll get your documents in, and we're typing everything in as accurate as we can into your application. I'll calculate your income and put it in there based on guidelines and everything there. And I'll run what's called automated underwriting, which is a system that we just click a button and it takes everything in the application. It says approve or, refer. If it's refer, we got to change some stuff and figure out how to get it to work. If it's approve, we're good to go. We're issuing that pre-approval.
Wow.
Now what happens is once you go under contract, or if we're trying to do it upfront underwrite, we'll take all those documents, we'll send the loan package to an underwriter, who is somebody in-house that all they do all day long is they read guidelines and they calculate income and make sure that your loan meets all the parameters that are needed to qualify. And then they issue an underwritten approval to you.
Okay.
So that's a person, it's an actual person. There's automated underwriting that is the system that once the actual underwriting person matches everything up, makes it 100% accurate. They've got to click the button and make sure it's still in the system approves.
Right.
But that's the underwriting process. And their goal is they want to get you in a house. However, they have to protect the company and protect the bank and make sure that the loans at the end of the day can be sold to an investor or are good loans to keep on their books.
Right. Very interesting. I feel like this is like so eye-opening, because most people would go with, most people I talk to would go with the bank that they're currently using.
Yeah.
Right. And then some of those people get the no answer, and then it's like, okay, well.
You get a ton of people that get the no's. If you have a really, really, if you have great, easy to calculate income and you have really great credit and a ton of deposits, the banks normally don't struggle with that.
Right.
Your big banks don't struggle with that. But even so, and this is a piece that a lot of people don't understand, is when you put an offer in, if somebody's working with me and you put an offer in for a client, I'm going to call that listing agent and I say, hey, my name's Ed. You just got an offer from John Smith. I've already reviewed all his documents. He's in great shape. If your sellers have any questions, please have them give me a call. We'd absolutely love to work with you. I'm going to make this the easiest deal of your life. Wow. That conversation helps.
Right.
If somebody offers $20,000 more, I'm a great salesperson, but we're not winning. But if we're really competitive in there and one of them's like a huge bank, like a US bank or a Wells Fargo that are notorious to kind of have a little bit of hiccups along the way,
right,
and I give that call, we're going to win.
Right.
90% of the time we're going to win. So that's another thing with working with your local lenders is just like the reputation that local lenders have in the local community, everybody knows that local lenders, they're in the community. So like this big person at a big bank might be in Chicago.
Right.
If they mess up the deal, they don't care. You're not going to run into them at Publix. If I mess up the deal, you might see me at Publix and be like,
Ed.
Like I got to hide from you. I got to go down the next aisle, pretend I didn't see you, go in witness protection. So like our reputation matters a ton because we're in the community. So like we're really going to make sure we give that service, and we make sure when we give those pre-approvals, we can close. And then that reputation builds with listing agents. You know, I spend most of my time going to meet with agents to get business, and it's two reasons. One reason is I want them to send me their buyers, so I can work with them. The other reason is there's a chance they're going to have a listing and one of my buyers puts an offer in on it. So when I pick up and call them, they know Ed that sat and had coffee with them. and they like Ed, and they know Ed has a family and those different things, so they connect. Like, so much of doing business is doing business with people you know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
So if I can get more people locally to know, like, and trust me, it's going to help you when you put in an offer.
It's actually brilliant because I can't even tell you, the first time I came into this home, it was an open house, and it was me, I think the only realtor, and the whole house was full of lenders. And Ed's right, you end up connecting with the people that you connect and like and trust, and those are the people that you want to work with, right?
Because I think I made a joke about all
You
of us
did.
lenders.
I was like, I think you said something about speed dating.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah, because in the lending world, we're all trying to get the business. We're all doing that stuff, and you show up, especially at like open houses and events like that, and it's like, man, which one's a real estate agent? And it's normally the real estate agent's the one hiding from all of us lenders that are like trying to pull on your coattails to get you to do business with us. So it's one of those things, and especially too when you're looking for the right lender to work with, find somebody that you connect with and you trust. Because that's going to help you so much. Because there's things that happen during the lending process where you're going to be like, well, why do they need that, or why do they need this? But if you trust that person, you connect with them, it'll help you to just be like, all right, Ed's asking for this, not because he's mean or not because he's being nosy, but because he actually needs it.
right. Exactly.
And that's I really tell people, get somebody that you know, like, and trust, and just if you connect well with a lender, trust that lender when they're taking you through the process. Because it's tough for what we do. We have one of my biggest things is if somebody doesn't trust me, I'm not going to work with them. Like, that's the biggest thing to me is trust. Like, if you trust that I'm looking out for your best interest and I really want to help you, we're going to have a great experience.
Right.
If you don't trust me, somewhere along that way, something's going to happen that like either one of us aren't going to feel great about.
Right. So another great question is, when should I refinance? I just had this conversation with my dad. They've been in their townhouse in South Carolina for 2 years now. And the traditional way of thinking is that you get into your house, you have this mortgage, and it's like this thing that you have to pay off for the rest of your life, and that's it. So I'm just recently having conversations with him where it's like opening his eyes that, you know what, you actually have equity that we can put to work for you, instead of you being like, let's pay it off, and then they're done.
Yeah.
They're wanting to retire eventually. I'm like, why don't we look at that now? So my question is, at what point should you refinance? Or is it wise to refinance?
It all depends on your goals.
Okay.
So let's say you bought a house and you had mortgage insurance and you had a decent rate. You didn't have a 2% interest rate. Maybe you had a 5% interest rate. You have mortgage insurance and now you have a ton of equity. It might make sense, depending on how much your mortgage insurance is, to refinance to get rid of that mortgage insurance. So it really depends on your situation. General rule of thumb, depending on your loan size and what state you're in, because each state have different closing costs, your rate needs to go down at least 0.5% if you're doing just a rate term refinance.
Okay.
Smaller loan amounts, we're going to want that to go down 1% or maybe more. Larger loan amounts, 0.5% makes a big difference, and it depends on how long you're going to be in the house.
Okay.
So you really want to talk with a lender that is going to actually figure out what your goals are instead of just trying to get a quick, easy refinance.
Okay.
Because we can sell a refinance to anybody.
Right.
But does that refinance make sense for you?
Right.
And that's what we kind of pride ourselves on as a local lender, of figuring out if it makes sense. If you're only going to live in the house for 2 to 3 years, don't refinance, because it's not going to make sense. You're not going to have that break even in an early enough time. And then there's a lot of situations, like I have people right now that have low interest rates that are refinancing, but we're pulling cash out for various reasons. I have some clients that are refinancing to pull cash out because they want to buy more investment properties. So they don't have the liquid money sitting in checking savings, or they don't want to touch it.
Right.
Because when you pull it out via mortgage, you can write it off. It's a tax deduction. So they'll pull the money out and try to use that money. There's situations where people are struggling to pay their bills. So they've got $100,000 of equity, but they have credit card debts that are at 30% right now, and car payments that are $900 a month, and it's crushing them financially. So it might make sense to look at a cash flow basis of, hey, I can refinance, my rate's going to go up 2% from where I'm at, but I'm going to bring in $2,000 more a month of my income that I get to keep because I limited my $900 a month car payment and all these credit cards.
Wow.
The real thing I like to be careful with that is because the dangerous side of that is you refinance, eliminate all that debt, get your cash flow better, and some people go right back out and they get more credit cards and they build it right back up.
Right.
So you really have to be disciplined.
Be wise.
In that, and be wise, and that's where you want a lender that's really going to say, hey, look, I want you to hold yourself accountable to this. We're going to fix this situation and get your payment. Your payment is going to go up a little bit on your mortgage, but we're eliminating a $900 car payment and $700 worth of credit card payments. Like, we're bailing you out using your equity.
Right.
Like, let's put a plan in place so this never happens. Maybe we're going to pull a little bit of that money and set it aside as kind of your reserve account in case something happens. Because there's a lot of people right now that, they're living paycheck to paycheck.
A lot of
They've
people.
got $100,000 of equity in their house, but if something happens to their car, they can't fix it.
Yeah.
Or they're done. They're in financial ruin of small little things that happen. So that's one of those, does a refinance make sense? Or another piece that I really love, and I tell everybody when they buy a house and they have equity in it, get a line of credit.
Yes.
A home equity line of credit. Put it on your house if you have the equity. And I tell them, that's your emergency, or that's the gas to your fire if you're an investor. That's your ability to have instant access to cash, and it works like a giant credit card attached to your house. So you're not paying interest on it unless you use it.
Right.
So that's, if you have equity in your home and you have a really low interest rate, it might make sense to just do a line of credit. Granted, line of credit interest rates are in the 8s right now. So really talk with that lender, and depending on your plan and the situation and why you need it, that's where to kind of work through on that. But if you don't immediately need funds, but you have equity, that's a great safety net to put in financially to have in case of an emergency.
Right. I used to finance with my bank, and it's not like you're talking to a person who really cares or knows you.
Yeah.
And so they might say, okay, let's refinance, but they don't really care about
why.
why.
Yeah.
It's just, let's get this done.
It's a paycheck.
It's a paycheck for them, right? So I love that. You're giving advice saying, maybe this might not work for you.
Yeah.
Maybe in a couple years, or we could do this differently. I feel like that's rare.
And so the local lender, when we do that, if we give you great quality advice that helps you build wealth and make good decisions for your family, you're going to send your friends, you're going to send your family, and you're going to trust us.
Right.
And when you trust people, you refer them more often. Like,
Right.
if I could have refinanced you and it wasn't right for your situation, but I would have got a paycheck and I did it, and you were like, man, why did I ever do that?
Yeah.
You're never going to refer a person
That's
to me.
true.
But in
Yeah.
that situation, if you came and I was like, look, I can refinance your loan. It doesn't make sense. Why don't you go get a home equity just so you can feel safe if something does happen?
Right.
Or, hey, let's just bite the bullet. Let's eat this higher interest rate and just have this for the next 3 years because you're going to sell. It doesn't make sense to refinance.
Right. So, but especially like the not elderly, my parents are like 70s, and they just feel like, why would they refinance if they can just pay the mortgage down if they want to leave the house for the kids? What would you say to, like, they have equity they can tap into, and it might be a good idea to invest in something else so that can grow?
Yeah.
Would that be the wise move?
So what happens when your house is paid off? Like, what's the fulfillment you get? Like, I ask those kind of questions because the generations that kind of came before us, it was modeled, you get a job, you work for one employer for 30 years, you get a pension or a retirement there, and you pay your house off by the time you retire or right after you retire.
Yep.
And it was just
And then
this,
it's paid
all my
off.
extra money goes to pay it.
Yeah.
If you have a higher interest rate loan and it's your highest interest rate debt and you have other debts, maybe it does make sense to pay it down. If you've got a low interest rate, why would you, if you have a 3% interest rate, why wouldn't you take your extra cash and put it in an account and make 5%? There's a lot of different things you can look at. A prime example is my parents. So my parents were of the mindset, 15-year mortgage, pay it down. They almost had their house paid off. They're building a house down here now in Florida because we pulled cash out of that house to buy that house. So it was like the mindset of, now you have two assets. We didn't use your cash. We used a home to pull out money so you have another asset. And the one's going to get rented out when they're not using it. So it's going to make money and it's going to pay for both of the houses.
It's crazy.
And now they have two assets. So they went from having, a $400,000 house to now they're going to have $900,000 worth of houses without using much of their own money, just using
Right.
equity in their home. And they're going to have when you take the rental and factor it in, they're going to actually almost live for free having both houses. So they can come down and visit their grandkids when they want, if their new house that they're building. So it's just have a game plan and talk through that game plan. Some people, it's just they can't get comfortable with debt. They're going to pay it off. But most of your people that become extremely wealthy leverage debt to get there. Unless you came from money, you're probably going to have to leverage debt to get there.
Right.
It's really tough sometimes for people to save $100,000 over a few years. But if you have it in your house, you can get it like this, and you can take that, and that $100,000 might be down payment on 2 additional homes that are rented out. So it's taking that and doing it smart, and that's where you have to have those great people around you that aren't just looking to make a paycheck off of you, but are going to help you become wealthy. You know, because I think the number one way to become a millionaire is through real estate.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I just want to thank Ed again for joining us today. If you have any questions about the finance world or real estate world, we are here as your friends to help you out. Ed, thank you so much for coming today and joining us.
Thanks for having me. And if anybody needs help, I'd love to help you. Shoot me an email at ed@strattonmtg.com.
Yeah, and I'll leave that in the comments below. All right, see you guys later.